It was a fantastic season that ended in massive disappointment for Oregon. In their first year in the Big Ten, the Ducks went undefeated, won the conference, and earned the number 1 seed in the first ever 12-team college football playoff. But in the game that mattered the most, they got absolutely destroyed by fellow conference member Ohio State, a team they had defeated just a few months prior. Now, they lose tons of talent from last year's elite squad, making another undefeated season very unlikely. But the goal of making the college football playoff and possibly winning a national championship still remains. The million-dollar question is, can they do it? Take a look at the offense first. They lose Dylan Gabriel, their star quarterback. They lose 1,200-yard rusher Jordan James, and they technically lose their top 4 pass catchers. They now have lost Evan Stewart for the season after suffering a just terrible leg injury. So, leg/knee injury. So a brutal loss there for the speedy wide receiver at Oregon. The million-dollar question now is, how does Dante Moore do at quarterback? Yeah, we only saw him attempt 8 passes with Oregon last year. We saw him sparingly a couple years ago at UCLA, but he was just mediocre. So how will he do as a full-time starter now with the Ducks? They do return Noah Whittington at running back, so that's a good addition there. They do have Mekhi Hughes coming in from Tulane. That's a massive pickup, a guy who rushed for over 2,700 yards in the last 2 years. At wide receiver, they have Malik Benson transferring in from Florida State. Their tight end, Kenyon Sadiq, looks pretty solid. Saw some flash of brilliance from him last year. And they have an elite freshman in DeCarrion Moore. The offensive line brings in 4 transfers, but overall, this line should have about 124 career starts among them. How quickly they gel will be the storyline to watch. But again, the biggest thing is Dante Moore. Can he be the guy to lead Oregon back to the college football playoff? Can he keep them competitive in the Big Ten? They got a fantastic coach in Dan Lanning, but can he be the guy after really not having much starting experience in his very young career? Defensively, Oregon loses 7 of their top 10 tacklers from last year, but their number 1 tackler, Bryce Boddicker, does return at linebacker. Mateo Uyunglele is back on the defensive line, 9.5 sacks last year for the Ducks, and they do bring in Bear Alexander, spent some time at Georgia, most recently at USC, so that defensive line looking to be pretty solid despite the loss of a few key players. They do bring in Jaden Kennedy, and at nickelback, second-team All-SEC from Ole Miss. Theron Johnson comes in, second-team All-Big Ten at Northwestern, and Dylan Tieneman, second-team All-Big Ten at Purdue. Both those guys in the secondary. Tieneman, one of the best safeties, I think, in the country. A massive pickup for Oregon. This defense looks to be loaded. The secondary looks to be loaded after only giving up 186 passing yards per game. But once again, with all these transfers, how quickly will they gel? How quickly can they come together? And will it be quick enough? Will it be good enough to get Oregon back to the playoff? You take a look at their schedule. Again, maybe a little bit tougher than it was last year. The Ducks ran the table, 12-0 in the regular season, beat Penn State in the Big Ten championship game, and then their only loss of the season came, again, in the playoff quarterfinals to Ohio State, 13-1. This year, they have to go on the road to Penn State. They have to go on the road to Iowa. They have to go on the road to Washington. They draw USC. Former Pac-12 members, but didn't play each other now, will be a Big Ten Conference game, obviously. They draw Indiana, who made the college football playoff last year. So a very interesting schedule for Dan Lanning and the Ducks. But I'll tell you right now, I think they're going to start 4-0. And I don't mean to breeze past some of these games. I mean, Montana State's interesting. They were the FCS national runner-up. Fell to North Dakota State in the FCS championship last year, so don't overlook that game. Oregon struggled with Idaho last year in the season opener, so I would not overlook the Bobcats, but I think they'll get the win there. Oklahoma State was one of the worst, if not the worst team in the Big 12 last year. They have a lot of transfers coming to Eugene. I just don't see them having much of a chance. Fun matchup of Mike Gundy and Dan Lanning, but Lanning will get the better of him. 2-0. They cruise past Northwestern in Big Ten Conference play. They'll be more competitive, but not enough to beat Oregon. And then they will beat Oregon State in the 129th meeting of the Civil War. Oregon has won 14 of the last 17 against the Beavers. They've won 8 straight in Eugene. And while Oregon State might be sneaky good, they've got quite a bit of talent, better than you realize, they're not going to have enough to come on the road to Eugene and get this win. Last year, Oregon winning by 35 points, outgaining the Beavers by 237 yards. A little bit closer than that this time, but they still get the win. So 4-0, top 10 team, sets up a top 10 showdown on the road at Penn State in the whiteout game for the Nittany Lions in Happy Valley. And I'll tell you right now, Oregon's not winning that game. I mean, if you look at the schedule, like Dante Moore is going to be tested, right? I mean, Montana State's not an easy team at the FCS. You're facing, I'm going to count Oregon State as a power program. They technically are. So 3 power programs in a row. They're not facing a bunch of weak cupcake teams there. But this will by far be the toughest test he has seen, the toughest environment he has seen, because Northwestern is nothing like Happy Valley on Whiteout Day, right? So an electric environment that actually is probably the toughest environment Dan Lanning has coached in his young career at Oregon. You go back and look at their schedules in recent years, didn't really face an environment like the whiteout game at Penn State in a couple of years in the Pac-12. Last year, yes, they played at Michigan. Yes, they played at Wisconsin. This, to me, is better than all of that. Toughest environment he's faced entering year 4 with the Ducks. And Penn State, to me, is the most well-rounded team in the entire country. Veteran quarterback, the best running back duo in the country, finally got some wide receiver weapons. They've got the best defensive coordinator in the country and Jim Knowles at their disposal. Oregon simply does not have enough to come on the road and win this game. It will be competitive, but I don't know if it's going to be exactly close. I don't think Penn State's going to win by, like 28 points or anything, but I think they can win this game by at least 10 points. I think it's going to be kind of a culture shock, a wake-up moment for Dan Lanning and the Ducks. They lose this game. They're 4-1, but the schedule lightens up a little bit coming out of that bye week. That's a good thing. 4-1, that's not going to ruin their playoff hopes or anything like that. They come out of the bye, they take on Indiana, a team that made the college football playoff last year. They could do it again this year, but they're not going to have enough to beat Oregon. Not in Eugene. Oregon off a week of rest, ready to recompose, just figure everything out, facing an Indiana team that yes, had a lot of transfers once again. Roman Hemby coming in from Maryland. Fernando Mendoza at quarterback from California. Will the defense be good enough to slow down this Oregon offense that hopefully by October 11th is starting to figure things out? I'm really, really am excited about the running back core of Noah Whittington and Mekhi Hughes. But regardless, I just don't think Indiana's going to have enough, especially in this electric of an environment. Eugene, as we know, one of the most difficult places to play in the country. So they win that game. I think they cruise past Rutgers, a long, long road trip for the Ducks, literally going from the West Coast to the East Coast, but they will win the game against the Scarlet Knights in their first ever meeting against them, and I think they will cruise past Wisconsin, a team who I don't think has an offense good enough to keep up with Oregon. An offense to keep up if it becomes high scoring, an offense to even exploit what should be a strong Oregon defense. And yes, the Badgers played well last year. Oregon only beat Wisconsin in Madison 16-13. It was a close game. It took everything they had to win that game. But they don't have enough now to come win it in Eugene. They just don't. So again, I think it's a slow start because Wisconsin's defense is going to throw everything they got at them. Oregon will wake up, they will pull away, and it will be more by 3 points. So they are 7-1 heading into their second bye week, and they go into the month of November with an interesting road game at Iowa. This feels like it could be a massive trap game for Oregon, right? We've seen that Kinnick Stadium magic before. They're bound to pull off some sort of upset this year. They get a lot of elite Big Ten teams at home. I think Iowa's going to beat one of them. I really do. But I don't think one of them is Oregon. Similar to Wisconsin, I don't think Iowa has the offensive capability to hang here. The offense has been their kryptonite for the last few years, and many years, I should say. And when you're facing an elite defensive team like Oregon, when you're facing an elite offensive team like Oregon, because I do think Dante Moore will pan out. I think there's a lot of unknowns, but I think he will get better and stronger as the year goes on. I just don't think Iowa's going to have enough to stop him. I don't think they're going to have enough to stop him. The Oregon defense will shut down the Iowa offense. It's practically non-existent. The Iowa defense will only be able to hold on for so long against this Oregon offense. Iowa throws everything they've got at them. They make it close. I think this game actually could be similar to the Wisconsin game for last year for Oregon. A tough road game, potentially at night in an electric environment, and it's closer than they want it to be. But ultimately, Oregon does pull away. They're 8-1. They cruise past Minnesota. They're 9-1. Again, Minnesota not a bad team by any means, but once again, getting this game at home changes everything for the Ducks. They get USC at home in the second to last game of the year, Senior Day, against the Trojans. Only the second game against USC in Eugene since 2015. It'll be the first meeting between these teams as Big Ten members. Former Pac-12 members, now members of the Big Ten, but didn't play last year. So first game between Oregon and USC, who both were at times dominant in the Pac-12 days, now finally getting to meet in the Big Ten. USC is an interesting team, a very interesting one that could be a dark horse in the Big Ten. They've got a great quarterback in Jaden Mayava, the top 2 wide receivers returning, the defense, sneaky good, sneaky underrated. But what's the difference maker here? Sure, you could say home field advantage, but I also think it's the Oregon secondary. We know that USC is going to want to air it out. We know how good of a quarterback Mayava is. We know the talent they have at wide receiver. They're going to want to throw everything they've got at the Ducks, and they're going to want to air it out quite a bit. And we talked about the guys that Oregon has in the secondary. You've got, again, Kennedy at nickelback, Tiananmen, Johnson, all those guys in there that are going to make up, I think, one of the better secondaries within this conference. And I think they're going to be able to slow down that USC passing attack, get a massive win on Senior Day that could potentially ruin USC's playoff hopes if they're in discussion by that point. They're 10-1 going on the road to Washington. And this is a trap game if I've ever seen one. Massive rivalry game, Oregon fighting for their Big Ten title lives, potentially playoff lives, everything in the mix here. The 118th meeting between the Ducks and the Huskies. If you look at it on paper, you say Oregon should win. They won by 28 points last year. But I'm here to tell you, this is a massive, massive trap game, and Oregon's going to fall victim to the trap. And I know a lot of people in the comments are going to hate that, especially because it's against a bitter rival in Washington. But this Washington team has some talent. Damon Williams, I think, can be a household name by season's end at quarterback. They got a 1,000-yard rusher in Jonah Coleman. They've got Denzel Boston coming back at wide receiver. A very underrated defense to go along with that. And again, we know Seattle's not an easy place to play. Going into 2025, Washington has won 20 straight home games. That streak could come to an end before they play Oregon, but bottom line is they're going to win a couple games at home that maybe they shouldn't. They're going to win a couple games at home over some big-time opponents. One of them's going to be Oregon. This, to me, feels kind of similar to the Michigan-Ohio State game from last year. Maybe a game where Oregon walks in, the higher-ranked team, the favored team, over a Washington team that maybe is anywhere from 6 to 8 wins at this point. Certainly not going to be favored against the Ducks, and they pull off the upset. Ohio State walked in, same record, 10-1, felt good. Michigan stunned them. I think that's exactly what happens here with Washington. The Ducks lose this game on the road. They go to 10-2. Oregon is a strong team. They're not as strong as they were last year. If you don't think they lose to Washington, fine. Then maybe they lose to Iowa in a trap game there. Maybe they lose to Indiana at home, although I highly doubt that. But I think the Ducks have at least 2 losses on this schedule. I feel very confident about the Penn State game. They're losing somewhere else, and I think Washington is one of the few teams on this schedule that can match them step for step, offensively and defensively. The Huskies get the big-time win. Oregon drops to 10-2, 7-2 in conference play. That might be good enough to get them to the Big Ten championship game. We feel like Penn State will get there, so it really depends on what Ohio State does, what Michigan does, guys like that. But regardless, even if they don't play for the Big Ten title, that should be good enough to get them back to the college football playoff. We saw this happen with Ohio State last year. Maybe it's a good thing, Oregon fans. Ohio State lost to Michigan. They didn't go to the Big Ten championship game, but they still got to host a playoff game. They won the national title. They beat you, Oregon, in the Rose Bowl in dominating fashion. Beat them 500 yards to 276 yards. It was absolutely ridiculous. Maybe the same could be in store for Oregon. Heartbreaking loss in the season finale, but maybe the wake-up call they need to go on a massive run in the playoff. 10 wins will get them there. It's just a matter of whether or not the Ducks can have a better performance in the playoff than they did last year. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Got the Oregon Ducks 10-2 in 2025. Leave your thoughts and predictions and comments down below. We want to hear from you. Also, check out everything down in the description below, including our website, thegridironexpert.com, home to our expert picks, home to our weekly newsletter, tons of exclusive content there to help you get through this offseason and a chance to become a member of our GE Nation, where we talk college football with you 24/7, 365. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.